Much, Carter, and to Farah for organizing this session. Emily and I are happy to be here on a bright Monday morning, at least where I am. So I'm just pulling up my presentation now, and hopefully everyone can see that okay. Thumbs up, I think, hopefully. Awesome. Okay, so as Carter mentioned, my name is Rebecca. I'm a partnerships officer with SOSCIP, and we are a technology partner in the ecosystem. And I'll walk you through a few things. And as Carter also mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat function to include your questions there, which we can address later, or use the hand raising function at the end of the presentation, and we'll go through each one. So we've been around for about 10 years. We're supported through FedDev, and the main reason for our existence is to really bring academia and industry together. So we're in the applied research world, and specifically, we are here to provide access to advanced computing resources to industry. So that really sets us apart because a lot of the other access to high computing and advanced computing is directed to research focus activities, whereas ours is about bringing the two together. What that means is we're able to, through the projects that we support, we're hoping to de-risk R&D or earlier stage development projects, so that hopefully at the end of it, you're able to migrate or integrate, for example, a new modeling that you've developed into a production or a commercial environment, right? So all this to say that we are in there to help provide a framework and an environment or a sandbox for you to do earlier stage development work in AI, in data science, and tapping into our computing platforms to help you commercialize new products and services, of course, increase business processes and sales and all the rest of that, and creating jobs. So what we offer is broken down to 3 different platforms. We've gone through a few iterations through SOSCIP. So if you've come across us before in the past, we might look a little bit different. So right now we have the cloud analytics, the parallel CPU, and our GPU platforms. Our cloud analytics is analogous to an AWS as an example, or an Azure. Our environment again is tailored to applied research projects. It is OpenStack based. So what that means is we provide the infrastructure, and then any sort of software packages that you might need to run it, it's on you. So it's a sort of a user-led initiative. And then our parallel CPU, where we do see a lot of activity, this is where we have a technical team to support. And similarly with our GPU platform as well, we have a whole technical team to help onboard, to register the users, and to make sure that you're comfortable and familiar with the environment before you download, for example, your data and migrate things over. And then we also help to monitor your jobs and tasks into our system, so that within SOSCIP's infrastructure, you get priority access, so that you don't have as much delay or lag as as if you were using it just as a compute Canada user. So again, the advantage of using SOSCIP here is so that you have that priority access to getting your jobs and tasks done. This is not an exhaustive list, but it is an example of different areas and capabilities that our platforms are used for, and the types of projects that we see coming our way. So with the cloud analytics, it could be some early data training, some early machine learning, real-time analytics, cybersecurity. So this is tapped into if you need access to the internet, as an example. Our cloud analytics, again, similar to an AWS, will give you that sort of functionality. And to reiterate that, if any sort of software that you need to run it, including additional security, that's in, you have the autonomy and to run that on the system. So the parallel CPU, as I mentioned earlier, so this one's tied to the supercomputer Niagara, and it's tied to SciNet located at U of T. And so this is where we see a lot of drug discovery, material sciences, computational fluid dynamics type of work running on our system. I mentioned that this is well utilized, but we haven't seen any sort of issues to run and the capacity to take on more. So certainly if this is a type of resource that you need, it is made available to you. And then finally, the GPU. So this is, if you are doing much deeper learning, we start to see language modeling, image, video analyses. So this is a platform that is well tapped into if you do need that GPU compute power to run and to develop new models or something that is more complex. We are sector agnostic, so this slide is, generally just to highlight some of the areas that we see a lot of interest in. So anywhere from advanced manufacturing to smart cities, and smart cities is, anything with IoT and connectivity that's very relevant. There's a lot of work done there. Of course, health. So at the end of Emily's presentation, we'll be highlighting a few not case studies, but projects that we've done and supported in the past. And with COVID this past year and still ongoing now, but at the beginning of the pandemic, we had an initiative to support pandemic specific projects and research. So health is definitely a big area. And then of course, energy, mining, digital media, business analytics, understanding that, whether you're a small, medium size or a large multinational, having that type of analytics to drive your decision making is crucial. So we're seeing a lot of that. And of course, cybersecurity, agriculture, aerospace, defense. Again, this is just an example of the areas that we support. And of course, for today, we want to highlight an initiative that we are doing right now between SOSCIP and our partners over at Mitacs. So more on that later. So that piece on environment and water, we can take a deeper dive into the initiative there. So we're here to, make sure that things go well, and that when we are working together and we're putting together a project, that it's set up for success. I think the thing to make note here is we are not only supporting super sophisticated AI data science projects. We are, I think that's something that I've seen that's changed within SOSCIP is to the flexibility of supporting even shorter term projects. So maybe 4 or 6 month type projects where you have access to the platform, do what you need to do, and then, continue on and integrate it into your business and commercial environment. But it does need to have a research question, and that research driven piece tied to the industry or a real industry challenge is again the key to bring the two together. And because we're under FedDev's mandate, we do cover or have a focus for Southern Ontario. However, I will say that we are doing much more outside of Southern Ontario. So if you do have an opportunity or you're working with an industry partner or a group or an association that's outside of Ontario where, there could be some advantages of tapping into our platforms, let me know, and we can discuss that on a case-by-case basis. So that's that piece there. And of course, when we step in to help you either identify or communicate the different resources that are available to you, we work together as a team and as a partner. I mentioned at the very beginning that we're a technology partner in the ecosystem. So what that means is we don't flow funds to your project, so we don't have actual dollars to support your activities. But that's why a partnership like SOSCIP with Mitacs makes very good sense because of the synergy that is there. So if we are partnering with a Mitacs as an example, and Emily will take a deeper dive into this, is they could provide the funding to support the student. And the HQP development. And then SOSCIP comes in to provide the technology and we layer ourselves in. And then that way, when you have your project approved for funding, you also have the computing infrastructure to move things forward. So where are we now? So we accept projects and applications on a rolling basis. And just in the next few slides, I'll talk about the CleanTech initiative. But other than CleanTech, the CleanTech initiative right now, we are on a rolling basis. We do reviews on a monthly cycle. So if you are interested, it can happen in a multitude of different ways. It could be if you have the industry partner already identified, we can work together to then do a deeper dive into the project scoping to talk about the different milestones and objectives, how long that project might be. A sweet spot for us is typically anywhere from a 6-month project to an 18-month project, let's say. And then as we chat about the project and the framework, We then talk about funding. If funding is necessary, what are the options to tap into funding? If Mitacs, as an example, would make sense, then we loop in, the group together to make sure that we have all the pieces. And then, as I mentioned, for the scientific review, we do have a committee that we lean on, and then so we can time ourselves so that we have it lined up for one of these review meetings. I will say that the success rate is very high, and then as you develop the proposal, you have different resources, including myself, to help review the application to make sure, again, that we're set up for success. For our purposes, I think for us, we just want to know what are the resources that you require and the proper justification, obviously, to support that. And then, the technology, the innovation behind it, and how we're going to make an impact to your project. The project implementation pieces, as I mentioned, especially for the CPU and the GPU platforms, we do have the assistance and the training to help you get on that successfully. So I mentioned that we're sector agnostic, but right now we're shining a light on CleanTech. And it's SOSCIP and Mitacs coming together for this initiative, again, because it just makes sense to do so, that you have the funding available, and then you also have the computing power to amplify your research and your data and your work. Now, in terms of the interest area, or CleanTech is such a broad spectrum, we kept it like that on purpose. So we're not, going after or only allowing certain industries and areas of interest. So this slide is really just to highlight and to give an idea of different interest areas as well as target industry sectors. But certainly, again, we are flexible. So if you do have an idea with a project that falls under CleanTech, we can chat about it. But really, it's anything from STEM to non-STEM that we can support under this area. And so what do you get for this initiative? So I mentioned before that we have our computing platforms. If you are able to tap into the CleanTech initiative, then we are waiving our platform access fees, and a little bit more on that on the next slide. But as I mentioned, so you have the access fees waived for access to our platforms. You have the funding, the support from Mitacs specifically, and then not only the one-on-one support, I would say that you really have the network support here to ensure that you have what you need to, to identify your AI and data science and data technology needs, and then to put together a good proposal going forward. So I think this might be my last slide, but just to summarize, as I mentioned, the main sort of pieces or key pieces here is that we are opening up and providing access to high performance computing resources. And through this, we are democratizing AI and data science. So we know that AI is not just for the selected few companies anymore. And as much as we're sector agnostic, we support companies from early stage startups to established SMEs and multinationals. So it does, range the spectrum. I'll reiterate that we are under, Southern Ontario because of FedDev, but if you do have projects or initiatives outside of that catchment area, definitely let me know, and I'm happy to chat further and see how we can support. The affordability piece is real. So if you have perhaps a big data project or you need the computing power, we're talking about $2,500. I'll use $2,500 for, let's say, a 12-month project, and the $2,500 gains you access to any of the platforms. And it could also be maybe a couple of the different platforms if you need it. So it really is a great value if you have the use for it and can benefit from using one of our 3 platforms that we offer. And then flexibility, I've already mentioned this before, so projects at any stage. I think that when we think about a company's customer journey, we're not just in the earliest stages of a company development. I think when I say SME, these are companies that already have a product or a service in the market, and perhaps that they have an R&D or an earlier stage, a higher risk project they'd like to do where they can partner up with a researcher. This makes sense to engage and perhaps re-engage with Mitacs and SOSCIP to see how we can fund that. So it's not, we don't only come across companies one time, and oftentimes we actually see them come back a few times, which is great. On the support piece, we also, because of our early partnership with IBM, there's also access to IBM software that is made available to you. So I'll leave it there. And I think we're going to, again, take questions at the end of both presentations. So if you have any questions, feel free to use, again, the chat function or use the hand raising function during Q&A. Thank you. And I think, Emily, I will pass that with that. I'll pass it on over to you.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Rebecca. That was a great overview of SOSCIP and some of the ways that here at Mitacs we can partner with SOSCIP. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And so, yeah, further to what Rebecca said, I'll give you a bit of an overview of Mitacs. I know some of you here are familiar with the program and our work that we've done at the University of Guelph, but a bit about myself. So I started with Mitacs back in October. I'm actually housed in the Research Innovation Office on campus. So I work with the industry liaison team there. My mandate is to obviously support Mitacs, but happy to assist in any way that comes with working with external partners. So today I'm going to give you just a brief overview of our standard Accelerate program, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the projects that SOSCIP has supported on campus. If you do have any questions related to Mitacs in general, certainly happy to address those as well. We do obviously see a clear alignment when working with SOSCIP, and our goals and objectives are quite similar, and they do really add that powerful resource that may not be accessible on all campuses or even in all research programs. So Mitacs' main objective is to really support collaborative research. We are a national, independent, not-for-profit organization, and we really strive to foster growth and innovation across Canada, but also within our international networks. So we do invest significant dollars on a yearly basis all across Canada. We have individuals like myself housed across Canada at all of the post-secondary institutions. We've been around for over 20 years now, and we do work on the with the industry partners as kind of our main program. And with that, we have connections with over 6,000 Canadian partners. We do, sorry, I just want to highlight some of our program objectives here. So we do support all disciplines. Obviously, our main objective is to support high quality research, but through this, we are able to look at new funding options. So this could be a way of increasing funding in your program without having to tap into any existing budgets. We strive to stimulate international research collaborations with many of our different programs that we offer. Some are our standard programs that can be added at the international level, while some programs are geared specifically for international collaboration. We strive to increase professional opportunities for students and researchers, and this is because all of our programs, I guess for the most part, do involve an external partner. And through this, we support flexible and collaborative research initiatives. So we have three main programs. Our Accelerate and our Elevate program are typically geared for research conducted within Canada, whereas our Global Link program is more geared towards international exposure. For the basis of today's conversation, I'm just going to go over the Accelerate program, as that's the one that's most flexible to utilize with SOSCIP, and it's the most utilized program nationally. So within our Accelerate program, we have supported over 20,000 internship units over the last several years. And these are really anywhere from small one-off projects to large projects within a multidisciplinary approach. Because we have individuals like myself housed either within a university or there to support specific universities and colleges, we do have a very high success rate because we are there with you every step of the way. Our application process is quite simple. And when you look at some of our strategic partners, we have created ways of creating even more streamlined application process. And this is done by working with these strategic partners such as SOSCIP. Our turnaround time is about 6 to 8 weeks for our standard program. And that's because all of our proposals do go out for academic peer review. And these programs are eligible for, these programs are geared not just for domestic students, but can also be foreign graduate students and postdoc fellows. So our projects start as small as 4 to 6 months, and this is creating one module. From there, you can build these modules to create as many as you need. They can be up to 5-year projects. The whole purpose, however, is that the intern or the graduate student, the postdoc, spends a minimum of 25% of their time at each of the institutions. So whether it's the academic institution or within the industry partner. And this is just to ensure that there is that interaction piece. There's certainly going to be situations where it doesn't make sense for the person to, or the researcher to be on site, especially right now with the pandemic. So there are times when we do allow for virtual interaction. And this can be in the form of sharing data and results, attending bi-weekly sessions to update each other on the process. But also it could make more sense for the researcher to spend more time at the industry partner. Perhaps there's resources within the external partner that are required perhaps on a daily basis, then that's the most sense. We don't necessarily dictate what that relationship looks like, but we do look for a significant interaction component. So we do follow a cost sharing model at Mitacs. And so if you break it down into one of those 4 to 6 month modules, we split that cost with the industry partner. And so they contribute $7,500, and then Mitacs matches that $7,500 for a total budget of $15,000 per module. And so in order to support, say, a master's student, we are able to stretch those funds across the full 6 months. And then of that $15,000, a minimum of $10,000 needs to be allocated towards salary or stipend, where $5,000 of those dollars can be utilized for research expenses. And so SOSCIP is a great example of a research expense that can be taken out of the $5,000 flex fund budget to be able to utilize those resources. This is certainly not something that you would need to worry about with this CleanTech call, as the costs are waived. But if you were looking to utilize SOSCIP resources in the future and there wasn't a specific call that was perhaps relevant, you would be able to utilize that $5,000 budget to cover the cost of the SOSCIP resources. We do have some limits on the amount of time, but like I mentioned, we have stretched out the one module component so that you are able to support a master's student and a PhD student throughout the entire duration of their project. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca to give you some examples of how SOSCIP has been able to work with some universities across Ontario. There is going to be an example of University of Guelph, so it'll be really interesting to hear that. And so I'll turn it over to Rebecca now.
Thanks, Emily. That was great. I can always use a good refresher on Mitacs. So as Emily mentioned, these are some examples, but certainly there are many more, and our website's a good place to poke around to explore more. This first one here is with Studio One Labs, and this one's interesting because I have known the company for a while when they were in their earlier stages, located in the Markham region. but they've developed a non-invasive intelligent bed sheet, and their first application was in hospitals, where the intelligent fabric, if you will, is able to collect patient data such as heart rate, respiratory, and movement and other factors, and provides that level of data back to the doctor. So it's quite powerful. SOSCIP was tapped into to help process the data for these to ensure the clinical standards and whatnot. What's interesting now is that they have not pivoted, but they've expanded their scope. So it's with all intelligent textiles. So we're very happy that we were able to support this. And this was between the company, Waterloo, and York University. And the next one, I believe this was the Grain Farmers of Ontario. So with U of G, we see lots of really interesting projects in ag and animal health, among other things. So this one is in identifying diseases in wheat, and just as one of many, many examples where you can use our computing platforms. And this one is the cloud analytics that it was used to perform RNA sequencing on the wheat, and then to help map against the genome sequence to then find critical resistant pathways in wheat. So this was neat. And then again, this was supported and collaboration between University of Guelph and Grain Farmers of Ontario. The next one. And I think in the next couple, we actually have that were COVID specific. So Cyclica is a company, Toronto, and this was a collaboration with U of T. So this was neat as well in using our GPU platform and utilizing AI-based screening to search chemical inhibitors using Cyclica's matchmaker engine. So again, they took advantage, at the very beginning of the pandemic, during our call for proposals, came to us with this very interesting one. The next slide. So CHIO Foundation, so again, tapped into our call for proposals during the pandemic, but with this one, we see a wide range of use case and a growing concern with privacy in patient data. So this proposed project was to use rapid access to EMR data, then develop software to generate synthetic EMR data to use with similar stats and properties to preserve the patient's privacy, of course. And then so for this particular project, they tapped into our platforms to help with the pre-processing, the model tuning, and the validation, the model tuning and the validation of the data. And this was led in collaboration with University of Ottawa. I think we have maybe one more. And this last one here again was to highlight another initiative that was that we had launched for the pandemic. And this one, as we all know, in the earlier stages, and just trying to come up with an innovative solution for non-contact, non-invasive early detection. So identifying things like temperature, heart rate, and respiratory rate in patients. And so this one, they had utilized our GPU platform to develop the signal processing algorithms and the machine learning models to detect it through a crowd, which was neat. And then it was monitoring through our thermal cameras. So the ability to tap into GPU intensive computing power was critical for them. And this one was also done in partnership with the University of Ottawa between them and J&M Group. And I think that's it. In terms of the projects. So our contact information are here. I believe that the session is being recorded, and we're happy to take questions.
Thanks, Rebecca and Emily. I really appreciate it. As I mentioned to everyone, you can feel free to put your questions now in either the chat or the raise your hand feature, and we can ask and answer them one by one.
Yeah, and if you do have any specific questions, maybe pertaining to an external partner that you're working with, whether they're eligible to participate in either the SOSCIP Mitacs or the joint SOSCIP Mitacs opportunity, and if you would prefer to send us an email, Rebecca and I are certainly happy to answer at that time as well. As always, we're always here to help.
And that's a good point, Emily, because you had mentioned other sources of funding as well. So something just to keep in mind. And from SOSCIP standpoint, again, We are also funder agnostic, or wherever the, the cash and in-kind is coming from. So I'm happy to discuss the details on that. But again, the reason that we've joined forces with Mitacs is because of the synergy to help support the student and to provide support there. And I think the other thing that Emily mentioned that I forgot to was, again, the CleanTech call is just now we're just shining a spotlight, but between both organizations, we support projects of all sizes and of all disciplines and sectors. So feel free to, again, reach out if you have any questions. Oh, one more I like. The other piece that we've been working on when we say partnership, oftentimes, what do we mean by that? So between Mitacs and SOSCIP, we've also tried to simplify the application process. So kind of getting to the nitty gritty of the process here, but I hope it's useful. Essentially, if you have a Mitacs project that's already been supported, and I was contacted by a prof from Guelph with regards to this. So great that you already received the Mitacs funding, and then maybe now you're only recognizing that you might need SOSCIP's support. That's fine. So we've joined forces so that if that situation is materializes where you have a funded project, then we can layer SOSCIP's computing resources in with a simplified application to do. Or at the beginning, we're identifying both parties and both needs, and we're doing one streamlined application and then leveraging each other's review processes to make sure that it gets reviewed and hopefully approved quicker. So some examples of how we're working together closely with Mitacs.
So for everyone who's participating, basically their first point, if they're interested in SOSCIP or Mitacs and applying for any of the different programs you guys mentioned or initiatives, they would contact you both first, right? So for any U of G sort of staff or faculty, like their first touch point would be either of you or both of you.
Yeah. I mean, Emily's got a great, focus with Guelph. So that's great to have the dedicated resource there. I failed to mention that my coverage, I mean, we're all over the place in terms of like our team works well with each other and we work seamlessly with each other, but my main coverage is southwestern Ontario. So anything west of McMaster. And if you're on our website, you'll see that we have all the universities in Ontario as an institution member. We are growing our capacity with colleges, and other things that we're doing is also growing our industry member as well. So we have Unilever, and then we just welcome Loblaw companies at the end of January, which we're really excited for. They see a real value in tapping into our resources and platforms for some of the AI projects that they have on the go. So that's another way that, it's a two-way street, right? So as much as if you're interested and you have an industry partner, oftentimes the industry partner comes directly to myself or to Emily, and then, we can lean on each other to then circle back to the research office as an example to find somebody to help with their challenge or pain point.
So I know I had one question, if there's no questions coming up for now, but last year, and I believe it was last year, right before COVID, so it was when we could all be in person, we did a SOSCIP info session, or Gregor hosted it from the Office of Research and Innovation. And at that time, I think was the initial expansion of the GPUs. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because I remember for our group in particular, we thought this would be an interest, anyone kind of working in the AI or machine learning space. Just a bit more where that's at, or I guess if things have changed since last year. I will say we have like great attendance even today. So I don't think there's any familiar faces from last year, but I remember that being something that you guys had invested in last year, and wondering how that's going, the different opportunities our faculty can take advantage of.
Yes, that's a great question, Carter. And because I'm not your technical person or particularly technically savvy, which doesn't help, but I do have a slide, which I'll just share very quickly. And again, this can be made available to the audience here today. And just to answer your question in a more general way, Carter, yes, our team did take the time to upgrade our hardware. So the slide that I have up is the actual capability and technical specs, technical software and hardware specs of each platform. So the GPU platform has been upgraded. We are looking to do, I believe, another round of upgrades. So again, I think if it comes down to if you have specific technical questions or if there's any technical limitations that you might see or foresee, our team is happy to jump in and support it. And I often tag team this with our technical lead, who is able to help you with more technical questions. I hope that helps for now.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And then I remember we talked about this, Rebecca, briefly, but the other thing I do want to mention, of course, our Carry I Seed Fund is around the corner for deadlines. Actually, I think it's due on Friday, but when we spoke last year to SOSCIP, we were trying to also find ways that could make it more accessible for our affiliated faculty. So just sort of like a plug out there, if you are interested in applying to the Carry I Seed Fund, those fundings, if it has an industry partner, can also somehow find a way to work with SOSCIP. And I guess the biggest thing from this is if there is no industry partner, Rebecca and Emily can try to help to see if there is a way to create one to make these resources accessible as well. So if there's no other questions, I think we'll let everyone have a early Monday start.
That's perfect. I just wanted to say thanks again for having us, and sessions recorded. You have our information. Don't be shy, and Emily and I are here to help.
Yeah, I have a question.
Perfect
You
timing.
wouldn't get let off that easily, right, Emily?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a question for Rebecca. Currently, I have a project which is funded by Shark. It's related to big data mining on the social media side, and working with misinformation. So it's very early stage. I'm not also very tech savvy in that case, like for big data analytics, part of like technical side of it. But one of my students working on it, and I'm really very interested in the platform that you showed. It sounds that the problem that we faced initially, that when working with millions of tweets, actually computer crash. So we now, started realizing that probably we need to use some kind of, I think Google has a free computing, access to computing, but it also not really reliable. So I'm interested to that platform, but also I'm interested to know, like, do you also help for finding partner? I think one of the challenges it might take is to finding a partner with funding, right? And given the problem we are dealing with, because I'm interested in misinformation and social media, and there might not be any partner or might be partner. So how do you play any kind of broker's role for those finding appropriate partner for Mitacs application?
Yeah, absolutely. And Emily will be able to take a deeper dive into this, but we see that all the time, actually. So if I'm understanding this correctly, there's a research question that you're interested in, right? So questions of, do we at SOSCIP have the proper computing resources? The answer I'll answer right now is yes, we do. So you mentioned Google Cloud and whatnot. Yeah, I've been on the company side as well, and Google Cloud or other credits, they run out very quickly. And while someone like an AWS can provide the services, the cost also adds up very quickly. So going back to what I was saying about opening up this project as a sandbox where you're able to tap into the resources to gather the data to do some experimentation, that sounds like it would be a great fit. And the cloud analytics platform would be a good fit in this case because you may need access to the internet. In terms of finding an industry partner, absolutely. Both Emily and I and our collective teams and network help to broker these and make these connections all the time. Strategic partnerships with if you have a company or a type of company that you'd like to partner with, certainly, and then vice versa. Oftentimes companies will come to us to say, who are the leading researchers and where can we get students and support to run this type of project. So the short answer is yes. And I don't know, Emily, if you want to talk anything. I mean, we do the RFRs, if you wanted to add anything else from that standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, so in terms of identifying industry partners, I'll put a little plug in here. We are going to be hosting a session in May, and it's going to be campus-wide, where we'll talk about different strategies of first identifying industry partners to work with, how to make those connections, and then how to strengthen that relationship with your external partners. So that's one resource that we do provide. We do lean a bit heavy on the faculty to identify those relationships, because at the end of the day, you know your research best, and it's a bit challenging perhaps for us to convey what you do exactly to our industry partners. That said, because my role is housed within the university, it is within my mandate to be able to be aware of what type of research is going on at the university. And so when Rebecca mentioned that we have requests for researchers come through, we do have a pretty strong account management team. And so their role is very industry facing at Mitacs. And so they speak on a daily basis with industry partners that are looking to work with academics. And so from out of that, if they have a project that they are looking to identify an academic expert on, it's something that myself as a Mitacs rep can shop around, if you will, on campus. And so if there's opportunities that come through those channels, certainly those will come through me. And if it's something that lines up with perhaps your research, I'm happy to share that over with you, as well as, you know, just kind of within our network, if we see an opportunity that seems like it could be a good fit for someone at the University of Guelph, more than happy to kind of sit in on that conversation and see if it could be a good fit.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'll just echo what Rebecca said. Thank you all for joining us today. It was great to be able to attend. So thanks, Carter and Farah, for setting this up.
Of course, we were happy to have you both, and happy to do this again. Yeah, with any other updates. So definitely take advantage of these two great resources, everyone, and have a good rest of your Monday.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.